to say it's not just communication in the family, it's communication in the world of work.
Yes.
I'm a member of Parliament, I work in Westminster, I see interns and work experience young people all the time. And one of the problems some young people have is they're entirely unable to communicate. So you look at their CV, they've got this qualification, that qualification, and they sit there looking at the floor. And when you're trying to draw them out and get them to talk, they can't do it. And then you'll get a young person from a different sort of background, and they're full of confidence, and they will talk and talk and talk. So I just think communicating in the world of work is also important. It's not to say you must contradict people, whatever, but being able to, I find I've noticed it's an asset. If as a young person, you're able to communicate, you're able to relate, you're able to project yourself. And I see very qualified people from Hackney who are very nervous about actually communicating.
That's a very valid point, actually, because when you apply for jobs, especially nowadays, one of the skills that they look for is communication skills. And some will even go as far as writing effective communication skills. Which then takes me on to talk about things like effective listening. There's such a thing, I'm not making it up, I promise you. There's such a thing as active listening. So far we've spoken about talking. The other aspect of communication is listening. So active listening, for example, you and I are talking, and I don't know if you did this, but I tend to do this a lot. When I'm talking with someone, I kind of start mimicking them, not even intentionally. Like, he's stroking his beard, and I could probably start doing that. I don't have a beard, but that's just something. Just because we're engrossed in conversation, I kind of start to mirror you. And I've noticed that sometimes I even sit down and I'll start talking like the person. I'm not Bengali, but you might even start to hear a twang of Bengali in my accent. Like, where did that come from, you know? But active listening, that means if you're able to mimic that person, it means you are paying attention. For example, when children, I have a 3-year-old son. This boy's got energy more than anything. And sometimes I just feel like, dear Lord, all I say now is, thank you, Lord, bless my son. Thank you, Lord, bless my son. That's it. So he'll come and I'll be talking to him, and he doesn't like it if I don't pay attention. So for him, my paying attention is looking at him and not looking at anything else. So if I try to cut him off at any point, he will say to me, Mum, I'm trying to say something. And he won't say it in a nice way. He will say it like he's my mum. You know, so for a 3-year-old to acknowledge that listening is an important factor, and then bearing in mind there's a difference between hearing and listening.
The essence of communication is to build relationship. Effective, healthy, good, name it. It's very important to build relationship, and that invariably means that where there is a breakdown in communication, there's a breakdown in relationships. That's what it ends up to be. So, and the form with which we communicate, especially with our children, is very important. Good communication or effective communication does not just start overnight. It starts gradually. And the implication of that is that how much have we been attached to each other prior to being able to build effective communication. In other words, that should take us back to what the scholars will call attachment theory. You understand? So we have to start that, build it up, because it's one thing for me to think I'm communicating with you, and in actual fact, I'm not. So talking is not just enough communication. The person must be known to have heard. If not, I could talk from now to tomorrow. If you have not heard me, you might be looking at me, you might be hearing, but you are not listening. I've not communicated. So a lot of things. So it comes from how much we have built that relationship over time. That is where we can get, especially in my position, to get my children to be able to open up to talk to me. Because if that relationship has not existed or has not been healthy, a child will not openly come to talk to me like the lady said, that she will rather tell the parents if anything is going on, because that is an indication that there has existed a good relationship.
there's a psychologist by the name of B.F. Skinner, and he had the theory of operant conditioning. And this theory is based on the fact that we respond to our environment. So for example, in his theory, he says operant response, a change in environment will give you a change in response. That is to say, we go to work, we get paid for going to work, therefore we keep going to work, right? Bring that into communication. If you talk to somebody and you receive a positive response, you're going to want to talk to that person again, right?
Yep.
When you're dealing with communication, just think operant conditioning, okay? So, one minute. Right, so if in relationships, as we're talking about relationship with parent and child, like we said, it's not going to happen overnight. If you went, as a child, I'll use myself as an example. As a child, if I ever went to my parent, I'm not saying this happens, it's just hypothetical. If I ever went to my parent and I was just trying to talk to my mom, you know, I'm in a very lovely, bubbly mood. Oh, mom, you know, keeping in mind my parents are African, so it most likely was mummy, right? So, yeah, hi mom, you know, today, Jojo, wait, I'm doing something. 10 minutes later, I went back. Yeah, so mom, by this time, the level of enthusiasm has gone down. I've done it by the third time, and she's still telling me, I'm busy. Tomorrow comes, I'm just going to be like, hi, I'm going to go away. So, do you understand? So, the response I got from trying to speak to my mom was, for me, a negative one.
Parents, listen. But how can you expect your parents just to listen if you cannot even respect and hear them?
At this point in time, from what I have noticed, from what I have seen in day-to-day life, and dealing with quite a number of young people in my day-to-day life, that respect factor, it seems to have gone out of the window. They want to be heard, they want to be listened to, but they're not willing to take the advice of an older person or an advice of parents. So, as you have mentioned, that respect factor does come into the fact. For young people, if you want parents to listen to you, I've always said that the first thing to do, respect is reciprocal, either which way. But if you respect your parents will respect you. It works both ways.
I was going to speak about time.
Yeah.
Time is a very, very big factor when it comes to communication, because sometimes we ask a question and we want a response almost immediately. For those of us that are probably, I don't know, religious or have a faith, you know that, okay, I'm praying to God, I have to wait a certain amount of time for him to answer me. We don't know whether he's going to answer today, tomorrow, 10 years' time, we just have to wait.
There's obviously the time factor like you've mentioned, but let's look at it on the flip side.
Okay.
When your parent asks you to do something, now I've noticed for most parents, for them to be happy, for them to do whatever it is that you want, it's give and take. My parent says, do this. I do it. So by the time I come back a little later and go, Dad, can I have? Your parents' mind memory is gone, okay, I've asked him to do this. He's done it without fail. You know what? Here, have. On the flip side, son, do this. Yeah, Dad, I'll do it later. Yeah, Dad, I'll do it later. You come back 3 minutes later. Son, I thought I asked you to do this. Yeah, Dad, I was just doing something else. I'll do it in a minute. You've gone. 1 hour has passed. You've come back and said, what you said. By this point, parents frustrated. And he's now screaming blue murder. It's the same. It's same if you look at it across the board. Now, by the time the child now comes back and go, oh, Dad, I need this for... The first thing the parents is thinking of is that I've asked you to do this, I've asked you to do this, I've asked you to do this. You don't do it, you frustrate me, and now you expect me to cough out.
It doesn't, to me, it doesn't need to get to, you don't come down to that child's level. You know, that child has made you frustrated. Okay, you want this? Oh, really? Okay, wait. Simple. We don't have to, I don't feel like, yes, be the parent, but I don't feel like you have to be aggressive in order to get your point across. I think it's actually more scary when you're not aggressive.
Okay.
They don't know what to expect.
Exactly. You're walking on eggshells.
That's how we women operate. For example, when there's been a little tiff and the other half is expecting rah, and then all you give him is, okay.
You know,
Make breakfast. Doesn't know whether to drink the
Doesn't
tea
know
or not
whether to
because
eat
you
it
don't
or
know
not.
Right, that's a different chapter. Right.
You wanted to say something.
Yes, I was going to say it's a matter of perception as well.
Right.
If you ask your child to do something and they say, oh yes, I'll do it later, they might actually genuinely have the intention to do it later. But if you have the perception that your child is probably irresponsible, doesn't respect you, and probably deliberately not do what you ask them to do, even if it's a genuine error from their part, when you come back and you find that thing not done, you are going to flip out for the sheer fact that you thought it was deliberate. And that's what affects communication as well. The fact that someone's made a genuine error, but then you've come down on them based on your perception of what you think they've done to you. And then that just affects everything.
Yeah. That's deep.
That is deep.
That takes me on to misunderstanding. That's another barrier of communication. I'm going to try and keep it short and sharp. When there's misunderstanding within communication, so many things can go wrong. It's like a ripple effect. So if you've said to me, keeping in mind that when you're talking to somebody, it's not always what you say, it can often be how you say it. So if I said to you, give me that, and then somebody else says to you, can you please give me that? Which are you likely to listen to, or you're more willing to?
The person that said please.
Okay, simple. Because they've given you respect and manners. I could say, can you please give me that? Or I could say, can you please give me that? I've said the same thing, but you're not going to want to do it if I said it aggressively. So it's misunderstanding. A lot of time, people will say, especially the black community, they'll say that they're aggressive or they're very, loud. When really, something that I learned recently was that it's not necessarily because of your race, it's also to do with the environment. Most Africans are raised in a loud environment. So therefore they have to shout to be heard, right? You come into a society where people they don't know the hustle and bustle of loud cars and horns and blah, 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 and it's the countryside and everyone whispers. And you've come here, hello, my name is... That person is rather aggressive, It's not that they're aggressive, it's just that they need to tone it down. I don't know how many of us have seen Coming to America, the balcony scene, say no more. So, so misunderstanding is a big factor. But in order to overcome misunderstandings, we need to understand that just because you shouted at me, it doesn't mean I have to shout back. I say this, I'm speaking to myself too, because I can snap like that. It's like I've got split personality. I'm working on it. It's like a defense mechanism. Somebody says jump and you're like, ha. You need to just rein it in. Let's talk things through and be calm and be peaceful. Take deep breaths.
It's like the transition into another language. Because I know a particular person that whenever he's speaking English, his voice raises, and I'm like, seriously? You said the same thing in Yoruba, but it wasn't that loud. Why are you being so loud? And he's like, well, I have to, and his nose starts flaring. Because it's a transition into another language. That's his way of expressing himself. He's not becoming aggressive. He's not being rude.
Just extension to that, that's where education comes in. When I talk about, I'm talking about like we're doing now, communication education, because communication itself,
I need to write that one down,
needs its own education. So when before now, like you said, if I hear someone, I do it now to people, but still I tell them, someone just coming from say Nigeria, I say, you shouting, especially on the phone, in the train. Those shouting, I say, it's embarrassing. But because I understand where the person is coming from, where, like you said earlier on, the commercial vehicles are so loud that I tell you, if I have to speak to you, I really have to shout. If not, you're not here. So it's not that it's intentional act, but it's because over the years I've been used to that. So coming to somewhere, the first thing is that I just raise my voice until I'm told. However, what I've also learned is that it's important that if we are told by even someone who we know that you're shouting, we shouldn't take it as an offense, because maybe They are trying to correct us for good.
Yeah.
So it's also a learning process.
You wanted to say something?
Just two things. Previously, the MP mentioned that communication within the work frame of communication. I think that's something also that possibly it should be reason being because there's so many different line of work in institutions. I think it's something that the educational institutions and schools should probably look at to really make more of an effort to preparing young people for different scenarios. It's like I think you said before, it's not just about maths, English and science, it's definitely about life skills. I know people are talking more about financial skills, etc., but I think fundamental, how to promote yourself, how to put yourself across in the best light as possible. And then we spoke more about actually the listening side of communication. And I think it's a very difficult thing in terms of listening, because you have to be able to listen without understanding that you can learn something new. And even if it's coming from someone who's half your age or someone who's going through something that you've been through already, something we tend to do as we get older, because we've been through that, we've had that scenario. So when you've got a young person talking about a school situation where if someone's bullying them, and to them it feels like it's the whole world, but to you, you've already been through that and you know how to deal with it. You really need to take the time to really step in their shoes and understand it from their perspective. But then the flip side of it is also recognizing that where you've come from, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's you growing up here, or your own individual backgrounds, informs how you interact with your world and how you have a perspective on how you see things. So recognizing that makes you monumentally ignorant of what's happening today and now, and also about different perspectives, means that you really need to take a 100% wholehearted listening approach.
I tell you why I applaud him, because of that word ignorance. We get so caught up in, when I was a child, my father told me, and this is how I did it, and blah, blah, blah. When really and truly, all little Tommy wants to hear is that, do you know what, Tommy? I'm listening. I understand where you're coming from, and we can get through this.
Together.
Lots of times, we get so carried away, and it's like flashback. Okay, something happened to my child at school, and she came home, and the setting was some girls were ganging up against her. She's smart. Okay, fine. So then I said to her, my instinct was, being a younger mum at the time, my instinct was, right, we're going to the school. Who's this? We're going to have them. But you can't do that. So, because obviously, instinctively, you want to defend your child. Definitely. Obviously, I was not going to cane the child. I wasn't going to touch the child. I was going to have a word with somebody. But she said to me, do you know what, Mum? Don't come to my school, please. I had to take a step back. I was like, I thought she was going to be happy. She said, when you're angry, you're a bit scary. Oh, no. But you know what? I had to, that was like a wake-up call for me. You don't see me angry on a regular basis, but it's like the transformation. So for her to say that to me, I kind of felt like, does that mean I scare her when I'm angry with her? So then it made me start thinking on how I respond to them when they annoy me. Because let's be honest, children can be the bane of your world, but at the same time, we cannot live without them. Yeah. So if she, at that age, which at the time she was in her teens, if she at that age, she still is, don't start calculating anything. But she was in her younger teens. If she at that age could say to me that she felt I was scary, how much more did her younger sister feel? How much more does her youngest sibling feel? You understand? So if I'm looking at the perspective of a 3-year-old, not only am I up here, but then to be telling him off and looking down at him, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I then tried to retrain myself to do was, I have to come down to his level. If he's this tall, I need to be this height to talk to you. If you're this tall, I need to be this tall to talk. And if I'm talking to you, I need to be talking to you, not at you. There's a big difference. Sorry.
I think I had to listen, and it's not very easy I'm a priest, 30 years in this country. And you'll have wondered, a priest sitting down and all of you are talking and I haven't said a word. But that's part of it. I came here as a 20-year-old from Nigeria. I've got 3 kids. The youngest is going to be 21. He's now off in New York studying. I've gone through it all as a teenager and I've had my own kids here in this country. And the first thing I say to you is that you cannot lead people you don't serve. Doesn't matter who you are. Whether you're a parent, whether you're MP, whether you're in the community, to try and lead people you don't serve is a crime. You cannot lead children you don't serve. And by serving, that means you help to engage them, to understand them, you learn. The core of communication is learning. If you don't understand that that's what communication means, you haven't started at all. To be able to say that I do a lot of mediation at different levels. If the best part of communication is listening, if you don't know how to listen, there's no way you're going to communicate well. And the transfer of information transforms, otherwise it's useless. And for you to take that information to transform you, then I have to listen. Like someone said earlier on, then as a parent, if it's in the family circle, when you have your children, you have to understand that responsibility. I need to serve this child. And our communication is a learning process. I'm learning from them, they're learning from me. So that takes a lot of humility and patience. Many people say, well, the potential in my child never really came out. But you killed the potential. Because from day one, you never understood to learn, to identify what that potential is. It's so important that it's a learning process. Often, coming, like you said, from Nigeria as well, I understand, I agree with everything everyone has said. My father was a police commissioner. Even though he trained here as a commissioner in this country and went back to Nigeria, I grew up around generals. You don't misbehave. You know what I'm trying to say? You need to know where things are. And then coming here, and like you all are saying, I didn't have that as a kid. You know, my dad only had to tell you not to do something. You don't ask me why. As brilliant as he is, and I love him to bits, the one thing I thought he missed was the fact that the why was good, because that's how I learned. So with my kids in this country, I realized straight away, as I started having them, I like them to ask why. Or even before they ask why, I explain to them why I said yes or no. That's how they learn. And then at times, I'm wrong. And they're right. And I must be willing to allow that as well. To say, okay, that's fine. Now, like Diane was saying earlier on, take it out of the family setting. I've had my time sitting privately with the last 2 prime ministers of this country. I've had a private meeting with Prince Charles. Different communication. Politicians, different communication. Then you go in a fighting environment. I fight public policy on different levels. A different way to communicate. I'm saying all of that to you that, like somebody said earlier on, there are different arenas of communication. And one type of communication doesn't fit everything. There are times you have to be somewhere and you have to be stern. You have to be bold. You have to be courageous. And there are times all it takes is be humble. So I'm trying to say to you that it's different strokes for different folks. Don't think there's one thing, communication method, that fits everything. It depends on who you're dealing with. I do a lot of work around mental health. You're concerned and you care for somebody who's in a mental health situation, but it's a different ball game in communication. You know, I say all of that to say to you that something that is good for every one of us is to understand communication is learning. You're learning from one another. And don't be frustrated about it.
Thank you everyone for coming here today. It's been a very, very, very good pleasure and a privilege for me to have hosted you. We have had so much conversation and I believe there's so much that we're taking away. From myself and from Speaker's Office and from the good friends of ACNI, I say thank you and I wish you all the best as we all go home. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here at Bold Talk. We've been broadcasting from Hackney Town Hall. If you're watching at home and you'd like to be a member of the audience, please feel free to call the number at the bottom of the screen. If you're a public figure in your community and you would love to host Bold Talk, please also contact the number at the bottom of the screen.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. From myself, from everyone at the studio audience, to all those listening at home, thank you very much for tuning in to Bold Talk. We'll see you again next time.
Are you a film producer, editor, post-production person? Do you require video coverage of events, equipment hire as well as graphic designs? Then look no further. Adesmark Productions Limited guarantees quality services in film production, editing, equipment hire, video coverage of events, CD, DVD duplication and more. Telephone number 079 56 921 064. Adesmark Productions, quality services guaranteed.